Hi, Gavin.
How's it going?
All right. I don't know if you heard, Haley's not going to be here today.
Okay, no, I did not know that.
She has to take a COVID test. I guess she had the home test. She was positive, so the only time that she could get in to take a test was during this. So I'm going to record it, and she can pick it up that way.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to take very long, at least. Uh, if you had a chance to read through the stuff, I thought it was really straightforward.
Yeah.
So, what I did to kind of help both you and me in the future is kind of try to create lists that I can use as quick reference to go back. So, I'll share those with you and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
So, I emailed you a page yesterday that has the place where you can download the NRC model for free. Um, I guess I'll go over that in a second, but that's
I got
what
it.
we may or may not. Did you have a chance to do that or not?
No, I just
Okay.
saw it and I didn't get to click on the link.
Okay. Um, I went through it, was pretty easy. So 16, 17, or today, I thought they were um straightforward. I reckon a summary of these two chapters close by would be helpful when the need arises. So that's what I tried to create. Something I can flip through real quick and say, okay, that's the one we're looking for. That's the direction we need to go. So for next week, you've got download the model and get ready to play. I sent that email. So this is the page I sent you. And then you got to have down here is where you download that nutritional model. Do you have this downloaded anywhere or not?
No, but I can start it while I'm on this right
No,
now.
no. I mean, if you have an older version, you have to get rid of that one first, and it tells you that before you do this one. So if you don't
Oh,
have anything on there,
no,
you
I
can
don't.
just click through and it goes pretty fast. I think it took me 5 minutes to get it up and running. Um, So it'll give us something to play with next week. I'll try to get a couple rations together so we can compare and contrast and get a feel for what's there. Um, so chapter 16, additives, ionophores, they are antimicrobial for gram-positive bacteria. So do you know the difference between gram-positive and gram-negative?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, so we're going to be going through it in 225 probably next week. So you'll get a better feel for there. So if you throw this in the rumen, either as monensin or lasalicid, those are the generic names for rumensin, and I forget the other one. Um, it shifts the rumen. You go to more propionate fermentation, particularly beef cows, not so much with dairy cows, but you seem to capture more of the energy in the metabolizable energy, more digestion, more absorption. So the cow's got more energy to work with. So you're looking at maybe efficiency. And they haven't been able to prove it necessarily in cows. If you got more propionate, you should have more glucose. Propionate going to liver and making glucose and possibly more milk. I know if you overdo it with these, you'll run into milk fat depression. And as a general rule, proven certainly in the beef cows, maybe not so much in the dairy cows, heifers, you're going to grow more efficiently if you're on that ionophore. So yeast, when you're thinking about it, you have to discern between the live yeast, which has a different effect or approach than the dead yeast. So a lot of industries that like beer and soy sauce and all those things that use yeast, or at least a version thereof. They'll cook their products so the yeast aren't alive, but the bodies of the yeast almost become like micronutrients for the microbes in the rumen. So if the microbes don't have to make their own vitamins and probiotics, they get them from dead yeast. There's an efficiency to that. Versus if the yeast are alive, they're going to scavenge lactic acid to keep the pH up. They're going to balance things out. They're going to use up the oxygen to get the rumen back to an anaerobic environment as quickly as possible. So better rumen function, a more balanced rumen function with the yeast is going to lead to a number of predictable benefits: higher intake, higher pH in the rumen, better digestibility, and then possibly increased milk. Direct fed microbials other than yeast, getting them in the rumen and seeing if they live and then have a difference. They have to compete with all the microbes in there. So the question is, can they stay alive long enough to have them benefit but die enough that you have to continue to feed? So that's what they're hoping for, that like the yeast competes for about a day or so, and then you have to re-inoculate. So it seems that the direct fed microbials to lactating cows, maybe they work, maybe they don't. If you put the yeast and the microbial together, it really depends on the cost of what that might be, and putting that against the benefits. I remember when I first got here, they were using the greenhouse to possibly generate, using whey to generate something for the cows. And I told the guy when I got on the phone, the president told me to call this researcher, and he goes, well, I can do this and that. I said, you got 10, maybe 20 cents a day that people are willing to spend on their animals. You can't spend more than that. And he goes, well, why not? I said, because it's not going to work. You got to have a benefit outweighing the costs. And I don't see where you're going to make money if you charge 50 cents or $2. It's just not going to work in the dairy industry. And he never called me back, so I must have pissed him off or something. So to me, it depends on the cost. Additives, silage inoculants. It seems that if silage is better, there's an opportunity to get more intake. The bacteria itself may or may not have an effect in the rumen. Figure it out. Enzymes, putting enzymes in the diet or putting enzymes in the inoculant may or may not work. I know I worked on a study once where the animals that were the feed was sprayed with this big mix of enzymes right before it was fed. And we actually got milk fat depression. And I was of the opinion that, you've got to cut your enzyme concentration in half, and then you might get some good effects. But they saw the fact that the animals on that mix crashed, and they just walked away from it because they weren't an animal industry. They were like a wood industry, and they had, leftover enzymes they wanted to do stuff with. But I don't think anybody's come up with a cocktail yet that works inside a cow. Essential oils are reported to have antimicrobial properties. May depend on the source of what you're doing, the dose and the diet. And I know this was going to be the savior in the early aughts, early 2000s. It really hasn't panned out. Everybody was chasing after it, trying to be the person who's the essential oil guru, and it just hasn't panned out. It may someday, but certainly not in the direction they're thinking. Then chapter 17, agents that are toxic to dairy cattle. So minerals are in the other chapters. They're sort of focusing, sort of not on organic things. We get into some bacteria at the end of it and where they fit into it, but mostly organic compounds. So I tried to put a table together that both I and you can have for the future. So alkaloids source is a cool season grasses, which is mostly what we feed. It may affect if there's too much. It may affect all animals. What does it do? It looked like a list of all kinds of bad stuff to me. And did it move into the milk? They didn't say one way or the other, or committed one way or the other. Coumarin. Sweet clover that's molded. Seems to affect all animals and blocks vitamin K, and therefore you get hemorrhages. I would imagine if people ate it, you'd have the same problem, but it doesn't say anything about it being transferred to the milk and therefore to humans. Gallotannin, oak sources, leaves, nuts, bark, any of those things. Oak poisoning, the animals just seem to waste away and die slowly. So, again, don't know if it moves to the milk. Glycosinolate, goitrogens from rape and mustard. They're going to interfere with iodine, and that's going to cause all the problems related to basal metabolic rate and things like that. Again, we don't know if these things are transferred to the milk. Gossypol, cottonseed. It seems that any animal that has a rumen that can detoxify it, we don't have any problems with it. Doesn't seem to be transferred to the milk. So our cottonseed, as long as we're feeding it to ruminants that are fully functioning, we don't have any problems. I would assume we could have problems with our young calves or maybe a cow that's got a real problem at calving and the rumen's not working the way it could. Nitrates, drought stressed plants. If we don't overdo it, the rumen can turn those into something that could be used in the A pool of protein. It talks about the problems associated with hemoglobin turned to methaglobin. So I assume that has to do, messes, all the effects are about anemia and lack of oxygen transfer, things like that. Does it seem to move to the milk? No. Prussic acid, sorghum species, seems to affect all animals. It's a form of poisoning, and it does move into the milk. You have a trypsin inhibitor in raw soybeans. It's going to affect non-functioning ruminants. A ruminant's going to detoxify that and reduce protein digestibility. Does this move on into the milk? No, it doesn't. Aflatoxin, vomitoxin, for fumonisins, ochratoxin, patalin, and zearalenone are all derived from molds in one way, shape, or form. You're going to have situations where lower amounts, the animals do all right. As we get overloading the system, we run into trouble in a number of different levels. Aflatoxin moving through the milk to humans is very bad. Some of these other ones doesn't appear to move in lower levels. Some of the other ones move when you've got higher levels. You've got that zearalenone that mimics estrogen, and that's going to mess up your reproductive females. It'll probably mess up your males as well, but our immediate concern is the reproductive females. So we've got a depression in rumen function, we've got inflammation in the body, disruption of protein synthesis, bad for the liver, the aflatoxins. So lots of different effects. We start looking at our herd. What are we looking for? We're probably going to see a depression in intake. Milk from production is going to be off, but these other things are going to be kind of hard to see. So I guess up the dairy, we just have every binder known to man, and hopefully we're going to block all these different mycotoxins. So microbes that are toxic, so botulism, a neurotoxin, does it move to the milk? I don't think the animals live long enough to produce milk. If it is true botulism, very little is needed to get the job done. And then you got the standard digestive upsets that you'll find. So trying to keep things clean, trying to keep the water clean, transmission to humans is a problem, but you're not dealing with microbes somehow getting in the milk. They could be transferred through contamination or some other way. So we have to avoid those in some way. Prions, very interesting when you think about it. The ability for proteins to replicate themselves. We don't think normally that's possible. You got DNA, RNA becomes protein, and that's the only way it works. These prions seem to be able to be absorbed whole, and then they have the ability to replicate themselves certainly in that nervous tissue, and it's kind of goes against everything we teach in introductory biology. This should not happen, but it does. So we keep the prions out. We don't feed ruminants to our cows, so we get blood, meat and bone meal from pigs and chickens, but we don't get it from sheep and goats and other cows, is the way we've broken that cycle. So I think that's all of it. Not really much anything for me to add. Is there anything you want to add?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Do you think these tables might be useful to you somewhere along the way?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll send these along. I'll put the thing up on YouTube for Christy or Ms. Christy Haley, and then try to get that downloaded for next week, and we'll play and see what happens.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. As we get close, we may have to double check about, is next week a really good week to do this with showmanship? Are there other things we got to cover? But you don't have any reading, so that's helpful. Just got to do a download for about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll plan on next week, but you and I'll talk whether we need to cancel as we get close.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon, I suppose.
Yep.
Have a good day.
You too.